Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with a new box. Yeah, a new box, a Warner box. It's actually a Warner Erato box. 9 CDs worth of Henry Purcell, played by John Eliot Gardiner. Now, I've had some rough things to say about John Eliot Gardiner after his huge, archive box came out, because like so many people these days, he recorded way too much, just far too much stuff. And some of it's very good and some of it's okay. Some of it sucks. It's like everybody else. But there's just too much of it. And the ironic thing about it is that the archive box, which contains, a lot of his, most famous stuff, is not his best work. I think his best work was on Erato before he jumped to Universal, and also partly on Philips, which is now Decca, which has not done a John Eliot Gardiner specific big complete box yet, nor has Erato for that matter. But I'm very happy to have this because this is some of his best initial work. There's no question about it. First of all, the repertoire is wonderful and interesting. And to have it all collected like this is so convenient because Purcell is not one of those composers that you're going to want to run around looking for, bits and pieces. Purcell, I'm always of two minds with Purcell because he was unquestionably a great musician. I mean, that's not the issue, but he was a big fish in a small pond. The small pond being Britain. And, he was a superb composer for what he was, for his era. But the era in which he worked, particularly in British theatrical music, was not one that was going to result in the creation of what you might call, large masterpieces, because that wasn't what existed and that wasn't the way he did work. So you get these things like King Arthur, which is probably the greatest of his theatrical scores. And, the play is missing. You get the music. It was a play with music. And the music was incidental. It was a parallel plot story that went along with the actual play. And that it doesn't exist in a coherent overall shape. You can do it with the play. It would last like 5 hours or something crazy, and most of it would be spoken word. So the Purcell bits are entre acts and divertissement and, little dances and choruses and songs, and they're delicious. They're absolutely delicious. But, do they sustain some of the claims made for him as one of like the greatest dramatists of the entire Baroque period and all that? Just no. The reason he's so well known in the UK is because he was it. No one cares about anyone else until Handel showed up. It's really hard to think of a country where you could summarize their entire musical history, basically from like the 1600s up through through the 1900s, almost, with two people, with two names, Purcell and Handel. And there were other composers. Some of them were quite good, but those are the two who overwhelmingly matter. And so because they overwhelmingly matter, their names kind of get flogged, over and over and over again. And then you actually listen to the music, and it's very easy to be disappointed because they're just short little sniglets for the most part. And an occasional gorgeous aria. And some of his other odes and other things, and we'll talk about those in a second, are splendid, absolutely splendid. So, and sort of, more continuous. So let's look and see what's in here, shall we? It has, like I said, 9 discs, and we'll deal with this very, very simply. First, there's King Arthur. Now, King Arthur is just fantastic. You get the frost scene, the cool frost scene, and some of the other stuff that he wrote, some of his best theatrical music, and it is wonderful. It's absolutely wonderful, fun to listen to, and it doesn't tax your patience because the fact of the matter is that back in those days, in the 1680s and 90s or whenever he was working, there was not a heck of a lot of music in large forms. They didn't exist yet, the large forms of music, the sonata form pieces. You could do like larger instrumental pieces in like Passacaglia form or something like that. But basically, things were short, especially theatrical bits. They were tiny little things lasting a minute or two. And there's lots and lots and lots of them. So you've got fabulous singers here. You've got Jennifer Smith, Gillian Fisher, Elizabeth Pryday, Gil Ross, Ashley Stafford, Paul Elliott, Stephen Varco, and the Monteverdi Choir and the English Baroque soloists. And what is not to love? It's absolutely first class. So that's the first couple of discs. Disc 3 has a whole series of like odes and other things. You've got Come Ye Sons of Art, which is famous, and Music for the Funeral of Queen Mary, which is very moving and very beautiful and appropriate to the occasion. And then My Beloved Spake, and Jehovah Qua Multi Sunt Hostis, and O God, Thou hast cast us out, and Hear My Prayer, O Lord. So it's a bunch of like sacred and occasional sacred things. And then CD 4 is the Ode to Saint Cecilia, which is, I don't know, in my book, it's probably Purcell's greatest single work. Certainly his greatest large work. It's 53 minutes long, and it was the Ode to Saint Cecilia until Handel came along and sort of blew it away with his own Ode to Saint Cecilia. But Purcell's more than holds its own. It truly does. It's a great, great, great piece, and it's of course it's an ode dedicated to music. The patron saint of music, and that always gave composers an opportunity to do their best, to offer their most varied and rich and juicy selection of musical bonbons. And Purcell just went ahead and did it. It's a glorious work. It really is. And then we get more theater music. Timon of Athens and Dioclesian. That's CDs 5 and 6. And then we get The Indian Queen, which is sort of his, I think, one of his greatest works after King Arthur. And then you get The Tempest, which has nothing but music that has nothing to do with the Tempest in it. Because, like I said, the music and the play were, separate entities in those days. And then the CD 9 is a film score. Well, I mean, it's the score to the documentary England, My England, the story of Henry Purcell. Music from the original soundtrack, which has, of course, a lot of the junk we just heard in the previous 8 discs. So I don't really care about disc 9. Although it's a nice selection of stuff. I mean, it's sort of a Purcell sampler. So you can put it on and listen to it, and it's enjoyable. I have not seen the documentary, and I hope I never do. I just have no patience for that stuff. Anyway, but nonetheless, these are, lovely discs with, original jackets. See? And the price is dirt cheap, and the artistic, qualities, the artistic values are of the highest. So there's nothing not to love. And like I said, if you get this, and then you get, the only other stuff from Purcell you need are the sonatas, and what are they, 3 or 4 parts? The little sonatas, and then the viol music, the fantasias for the viols, that whole thing, which are gorgeous works, absolutely gorgeous works. You've got Purcell pegged. So you can sort of do it all in like 2 or 3 of these rather affordable boxes, depending on which performances you get, plus 1 or 2 CDs. And that's Purcell. There's more. There's lots more. You can go crazy getting more. But for collectors' purposes, and most collectors, I think, unless you're Baroque specialists, this is really an essential acquisition. And I'm so happy to have this in a box, and I can get rid of all the other individual releases I had of these things. It's a wonderful deal. I will be reaching for this whenever I want to hear Purcell. It's just so blasted convenient. And the performances, like I said, are Gardiner before he became Gardiner. You know what I mean? Before it all went to his head and he became sort of an arrogant booby. But he was still like a serious musician when he did this. He's always serious. He takes himself very seriously. Trust me in that. But I think there was a certain journey of discovery and freshness to his music making in these earlier recordings that has since evaporated. So I'm very, very happy to recommend this wholeheartedly. Keep on listening, friends. Thank you so much for joining me. Take care.